of course, the receiving of the Torah. God gave us the Torah Mount Sinai, and I would like to encourage everybody to join us for we're having a social distance ice cream party on Friday morning at 10 a.m. Also, we're going to have services Thursday night, Friday morning, Friday night, and Saturday morning. If you want to come to services, we'd love you to join in person. Just let me know because we have a limited amount of space. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about how important it is to think positive, but also how our minds really impact the way things turn out to be. Sometimes we think, what's my way of seeing it? How is that going to make a difference? But the truth is that the way we decide things in our head actually has a physical manifestation and a physical impact on the things that we do. I'm going to start with a little story here. We're going to hear it from the man himself, and I'll share the screen. This is a story from Rabbi Benjamin Gordon. And Rabbi Gordon, he's the Chabad, was the Chabad rabbi in Encino, California. Unfortunately, he passed away. But here's his story. Second. No, not that one. This one. Okay. Can you hear it? Can you hear it and also see the words?
Hear it.
You didn't hear it? Okay, so let's try this again. Let's try this. Oops, a second. See me making the screen bigger?
Yeah.
Okay, let's try this now. You hear now?
We see the words.
Oh.
Don't hear anything.
Okay, let's try this. Oops. Try this one more time here. One second. Oh. Hold on 1 second. This week I thought I perfected already the screen sharing. I guess not. All right. 1 second. Okay. All right, now it should go. Now it's gonna go.
No sound.
Still no sound.
No.
I hear background. Someone's background.
Oh, I'm going to turn mine off. I was just wanting to let.
Oh. Okay, so let's try this. Let's see. Why is the sound not going? I don't understand. Very weird. Still not, huh?
No sound.
Yeah, I'm trying to see why that's so weird. Huh.
Last week you had it working.
Yeah, I'm not sure why sound's not working now. It's very weird. Last thing I used my computer. This week.
My wife and I were facing a very serious challenge in our lives. It was a very debilitating challenge at the time. And more so than affecting me, it affected my wife and my family. And there were no answers. There were no answers. We had no idea what to do with this. Wherever we turned, we hit brick walls. So I said to my wife, why don't you sit down and write a letter to the Rebbe? But she sat down and she wrote a 10-page letter to the Rebbe. I get a call from Rabbi Gordon, who, as he often said to me, said, Yeshu Binyamin, you have a pencil? And the Rebbe wrote, Shekama v'kama pa'omim ba'avidosam hagdosha, time and again in their holy work, nidma lahem, they imagined, shahamatzav agivald, that the situation they find themselves in is agivald, end of the world. Agivald, help! V'nehapach l'toiv, and yet the situation was flipped, transformed to good. Hanira v'hanigla, a revealed and visible good. So the Rebbe said, V'yisyatzu kenal, meaning that we had previously placed this question before the Rebbe, and the Rebbe told us, Katsas askone anash shebe California, or Katsas askone anash al asar. And then the Rebbe wrote, V'yekaimu hatzivui, they should fulfill the command. Whose command? The Tzemach Tzedek's command. Trach gut, v'zayin gut. Think optimistically, things will turn out well. V'yavasru teiv, and they will report good news. Askir alatzi, and I'll mention you at the ohel of the previous Rebbe. Wow, what words. Rabbi Kunin, who usually knows the answer to every problem, he said, I'll be very honest with you guys, I don't know. I don't know what to do. And then Rabbi Reichik said, when we asked him, what do you think? Rabbi Reichik would refer to me as Josh. He said to me, Nee, Josh, der Eibishter wird doch sicher helfen. God will surely help. This was Rabbi Reichik's standard answer for every question.
Okay. Oh. Second.
God will surely help.
Okay. So, Rabbi Gordon, clearly he wrote into the Rebbe, and he wrote into the Rebbe about his issues or his problems, his challenges, more than once. And what was the Rebbe's response? The Rebbe's response is a very human response. How many times have we been through a certain circumstance or a certain situation, once, twice, a few times, and every time it turned out okay, yet every time we always worried about what is going to be the outcome of this scenario or this story. Yet every time it turns out okay. So the question is, why is it that we know it's going to turn out okay? We know it's going to turn out okay because it always does turn out the way we needed it to turn out. So why is it that we go into the same pattern over and over again when we know that the results are not going to be the way we think it's going to be, because it's always going to be good? I'm not talking about a new situation. If it's a new unexpected thing that happens, an unexpected question, an unexpected challenge, okay, we're not sure what the result's going to be. Fine, so we have a good question. I'm talking about something that has happened before. The same scenario repeated itself. I don't know. A child took a car for a ride and were nervous until they get home. Why? They took the car 1,000 times and they always came home. Why are we worried? What are we concerned about? We went to the doctor 1,000 times, and every time the doctor said we're fine. Why are we still worried every time we go to ask about the same pain or headache or whatever it is? In other words, so many times we worry about things, that have happened to us already several times, and yet we somehow convince ourselves that this is the first time and this is going to be the worst thing. So this is what the Rebbe said. I've already answered you to this challenge many times, and what is the answer? The answer is with the classic Hebrew words, or Yiddish words, trach gut vet sein gut. Think positive, and it will be positive. Yankel owed his friend $500, and every night he couldn't sleep. He couldn't sleep. Every night he just couldn't sleep. Finally, one night at 2 o'clock in the morning, he was fed up of turning over back and forth, turning over in his bed. He opens up his window and he says, "Shmerel." So I says, "What are you screaming? What are you screaming to the guy?" He says, "Shmerel, I owe you $500. Shmerel says, "Yeah." He says, "Well, I'm not paying you back." He closes the window and he goes to sleep. So I said, "What'd you do?" He says, "Now let him worry about it. Now I can finally get a good night's sleep." So, well, a lot of times our worry are repeat issues or repeat challenges. Therefore, what's required is the exercise of this idea that the Tzemach Tzedek taught us of trach gut vet sein. Think positive, and it will be positive. I remember my brother used to say this all the time. In fact, when my brother was battling cancer, so he had these bracelets made I don't know, about 10 years ago, those silicone bracelets were the in thing, and you would get any imprint or wrote whatever you want on it. So he got these silicone bracelets, yellow bracelets that said, "Tracht gut vet sein gut." His doctor at the time still wears it till today. He showed it to me last year. Still wears the bracelet. But the point is that it's etched in his personality, this idea that no matter what and how grave the diagnosis is, think positive and it will be positive. And here's the story. The story is with the Tzemach Tzedek, that there was once one of his followers came to him and he said that my son is very, very ill. And I don't know what to do. All the doctors have given up hope, and I'm coming to you, Rebbe, for a blessing. So the Rebbe said, very simple, think positive and it will be positive. The chassid took it to heart, and he began to think positively that his son's going to be well, his son's going to be fine, he's going to walk his son to the chuppah, all the blessings, all the positive thoughts that he could possibly think of. He was thinking that. When he came home, his wife greeted him at the door and says, "You won't believe it, but our son is perfectly normal. He's healthy." So what happened? What happened? Did he heal his son? Did his son all of a sudden get a good medicine? What exactly changed? And the truth is that when a person thinks in a certain way, they actually change the outcome. And here's how it works. So science, in the Scientific American Journal, they came up with a way in how people should overcome their anxiety. And they said, think of the worst case scenario. This way, when things don't turn so bad, you'll be happy. Right? Because if you think that the best thing is going to happen, the best positive outcome, and the best potential doesn't come to fruition, so you're going to feel bad, then you're going to get depressed. So how do you overcome depression? The science says, very simple, think of the worst case scenario, and then you'll be happy with the results. But of course, Hasidus and Judaism teaches us just the opposite. That if you think good, it will be good. Meaning to say that there's a spiritual component to what's going on over here. Then we think positive. Give a simple example. When you go to meet somebody and you're looking for a specific result or response from that person, if you're going to think in a negative manner, the chances are you're going to get a negative result. You think in a positive result, the chances are you're going to get a positive result. Because spiritually, we're sending these healthy vibes into the air, and it actually impacts the world on a physical manifestation. Let's break this down a little bit more. The question is asked, how could it be if a person is supposed to receive a certain type of result from a question or from an action, how could my thinking positive change that result? In other words, if I'm meeting someone, I'm supposed to get a no, how could my positive thinking change this person's response that now I should get a yes answer? Now, how could my simple thinking change the actual results of it? And so here's the way it works is that when I think a certain way, I'm actually rising above the physical manifestation or the physical world. So I begin to function on a totally different level. Okay. I don't know if it's ever happened to you, but if you have a certain brain freeze, you have an idea, but something is a blockage in your mind and you can't get past that blockage, right? All of a sudden you think about something else and then that blockage that you had all of a sudden opens up. What happened was that you rose above the challenge, above the problem, and now somehow something else swooped in and the problem either was resolved or figured out how to fix that issue or come up with an answer to the question that I had. So what happens is that if we're stuck in a certain path, you're right, we can't get out of that path. So we have to change course. And the way Chassidus tells us to change course is to take the high road. Rise above the challenge. When we rise above it, we're actually changing the results also. So if we think positive, we're actually changing the way it works. In other words, the powerful effects of positive thinking, as illuminated in the teachings of Chassidus, are not psychological. Rather, the positive thinking and trust that we have in Hashem actually changes the future reality for the better. Positive thinking doesn't just help us manage or react to our reality, but it literally helps shape and create a better reality or a new reality. I'll give you an example. Let's share another story. The story with Rabbi Rothenberg. So let's do the screen share. You can hear it.
Rabbi Avraham Rothenberg is an educator living in Israel. In 1957, while en route to Israel from Brazil, he stopped in New York for an audience with the Rebbe.
נכנסתי לפנת בוקר, כנראה האחרון בתור ככה, כי לא הייתה לי, נכנסתי ודיברתי המון זמן עם הרבי, ברזיל, ועד חינוך וכולו וכולו, והוא המליץ, אמרתי כך, אמרתי שאולי כדאי שנשאר פה קצת, שנהיה מורה פה, מה חסרים פה מורים, שם יותר חסרים מורים, אבל אמרתי, יש מי שיבד את מקומי שם, וקיבלתי משרה בניו יורק, ונשארתי שם שנתיים. כל שנה, לקראת סוף השנה, אני לקחתי את כל הכיתה ונכנסתי לרבי. כל הכיתה, והוא נתן שיחה בפניהם, כן, כל שנה ככה, משהו מיוחד. יום אחד אני מקבל מכתב מהבית, אחי כותב מכתב, אני זוכר יום חמישי בערב, כותב מכתב, אומר, שאבא קיבל התקפת לב, והוא במצב אנוש. עכשיו המכתב הזה יצא, נגיד ביום ראשון, ואני קיבלתי אותו ביום חמישי. היום קשה להבין את זה, איך לא מטלפנים, איך אני לא יודע מה, איך לא שולחים מברק, שום דבר לא, כתבו ככה. עכשיו אני מקבל מכתב כזה, מה אני צריך לחשוב? ומה, כן, אז אני הכנסתי מכתב לרבי, שאחי כתב כך וכך, וכותב שמצב אנוש, וכתבתי, כבר אינני יודע מה לחשוב. כך כתב שם. אז הרבי לקח את המכתב הזה, עשה קו מתחת למילים האלה, כבר אינני יודע מה לחשוב, הוא כותב, ולפלא, 3 סימני קריאה ככה, אתה רואה את העוצמה שבזה ככה, ולפלא, שהרי ידוע בכגון דע, ציווי נישואינו רבותינו, טראחט-גוט ורטזיין-גוט, ואחכה לבשורות טובות. טוב, קיבלתי את המכתב הזה, ידעתי שאבא שלי חי. זה יום 5 בלילה. עובר את השבת, ביום ראשון עזרתי אומץ וטלפנתי הביתה. סך הכל היה לי טלפון ובבית היה טלפון. אבל אז כל כך היה נדיר לטלפן מעבר לים. מי עושה דברים כאלה? היום מטלפנים 10 פעמים ביום. אבל אז זה כאלה. טוב, אז אמא שלי מרימה את הטלפון, שאלתי אותה מה שלום אבא, יצא מכלל סכנה. שאלתי אותה מתי? היא אמרת לי ביום 5. יום 5. טוב. יפה, טוב. עברתי את הכביש והלכתי במינכה שם ואמרתי שהרבי יוצא ממינכה. נו, הראתם סטויבס פמיר? שאל אותי. אמרתי לו, כן. עכשיו דיברתי בטלפון, יצא מכלל סכנה. אז הוא שואל אותי מתי? אמרתי לו ביום 5 בערב. כן? ביום 5 בערב. הוא אומר לי, wenn hat ihr umgehoben zu trachten gut? מתי אתה התחלת לחשוב טוב? אמרתי לו, מתי אתה התחלת לחשוב טוב? אמרתי לו, מתי שהרבי אמר, מתי זה היה? מתי זה? אני אומר לו, דונה שלי בלכת, ביום 5 בלילה זה היה. אתה קולט מה אתה מבין, הוא לא בעסק, אז אתה, כן. Soll doch noch einmal nicht treffen solche Sachen, sollt wissen allemal zu trachten gut. שיותר לא יקרו מקרים כאלה, אבל שתדעו תמיד לחשוב טוב.
Beautiful. So here you have a situation where the moment the son in America started to think positive, it impacted his father in Israel, who had a serious heart attack, to begin to feel better. How does that happen? So I want to share with you another story. When I was growing up in Crown Heights, there was a elderly chassid. His name was Zalman Garari. And the Zalman Garari once came to the Rebbe, and he had to undergo an operation. I remember him sharing this story. He was friendly with my father, and he had to undergo operation. And so he went to the Rebbe, and he asked the Rebbe for a blessing that his operation should be successful. So the Rebbe said, why don't you ask me that you shouldn't need the operation? So he realized what the Rebbe is telling him. So he says, okay, Rebbe, yeah, I asked for a blessing that I shouldn't need the operation. So the Rebbe said, now it's too late already. I'll give you a blessing that the operation should be successful, but it's too late. You should have asked that question in the first place. This is the story. So let's break down the story. Let's understand this for a second. The Rebbe could technically, clearly the Rebbe was saying, I could give you a blessing that you shouldn't need an operation, right? But the Rebbe is saying, I could only function in your world. I can only function in the way you see things. So your faith in God is that you should have a successful operation. I can give you a blessing based on your box that you put yourself into. But you should really have more faith in God that you shouldn't even need the operation. Then I could function in your new square, new box that you made for yourself. Understand? So when we think positive, we lift ourselves up out of a certain framework that we've been in until now. And the moment we lift ourselves out of that framework, we are now no longer limited to our original place that we were in. Now we are in an advanced stage, in a new stage. So once we're in the new stage, now we function on a different set of rules. This new set of rules is good. It's going to be good because it is good. And so essentially what we have to do is take our minds and let our bodies and our hearts follow our minds to the new realm of thinking positive, thinking good. And it's incredible when we do this, when we work on ourselves. It's not an easy thing, but when we work on ourselves, it's incredible how it makes us feel and how we function and how we make decisions based on that. Because now it's a whole new way of thinking. So the Rebbe is telling us, why limit God to the parameters of the medical doctor's expertise or direction that they gave you? You can live on a completely new level. And so this is the first lesson that we learn. And that is that why does somebody tell you, aim for the moon, so if you miss the moon, you'll land on the stars? That is actually in line with the Jewish thinking of thinking positive, versus science telling us that expect the worst, because then when you get something good, you'll be happy. That will say better, hope for failure or expect failure, and if you get something, okay, at least you got something. But Yiddishkeit says no. The Torah says no. Aim for the highest and you will get there. Not if you miss. Don't even think you're going to miss. If you think you're going to miss, then you're leaving space. You're not 100% thinking positive. To think positive means you have to consistently and completely think positive, and that certainly will have positive results. Now let's learn a Mishnah. So Mishnah in Ethics of Our Fathers, chapter 6, as we get ready for Shavuos. And the Mishnah is like this. Mishnah number 8. Mishnah says as follows. There were 5 acquisitions that God acquired in the world. And these are, number 1, the Torah is one acquisition. Heaven and earth is one acquisition. Abraham is one acquisition. The people of Israel is one acquisition. The Holy Temple is one acquisition. The Torah, as it is written, as we mentioned last week, everything, anytime any sage makes a statement, can't just make a statement out of the blue, has to be based on something concrete, something real, meaning to say that they base it on a verse. And so here they base each statement on a verse. The Torah, why is that an acquisition of God? Because God acquired me in the beginning of his way before his works of yore. Heaven and earth is written, the verse tells us, so says God, the heaven is my throne and my earth is my footstool. What house then can you build for me, and where is my rest? So building for me means that he acquired it, he built it. How many of your works, O God, you have made them with all wisdom. The earth is filled with your acquisitions. Right? It's again using the word acquisition. Abraham, as it is written, he blessed him and said, blessed be Abraham to God Most High, acquirer of heaven and earth. Say Abraham was acquired. We're going to discuss in a moment if it says acquire on heaven and earth or as it refers to Abraham. But for now, we'll continue. The people of Israel, as it is written, until your nation, O God, will pass. Until this nation you have acquired will pass. And it says, to the holy ones who are upon earth, the noble ones in whom is all my delight. And finally, the Holy Temple is the 5th acquisition, as it is written in the base of your dwelling, that you, God, have achieved a sanctuary, O Lord, that your hands have established. And it says, he brought them to his holy domain. This mount his right hand has acquired. So let's begin to try to break down all these things. The first question that comes to mind is, wait a second. The whole Mishnah doesn't make sense. How's it possible for God to acquire anything? We're talking about God. God owns everything. God is a creator of everything, the builder, the maker of everything. What does it mean that he's acquiring it? When we say you acquire something, it means you don't have it. You have to go out and buy it. But if he owns it, so why is he acquiring it, right? So what is the Hebrew word for acquire? The Hebrew word is kinyan. There are 5 things that are a kinyan. So if we look at the wording closely, we see like this. That God is telling us as follows. True, I created the world. But what is most precious to me? What is most cherished to me? There are these 5 things I consider my own. I consider my possessions. I consider that I have acquired it. Why specifically these 5 things? And what exactly does each of these 5 things mean, and what does it represent? There's a story that is told that went around the internet just recently during the coronavirus. And as every story in the internet, either it's true or it's not true. But the story is an interesting story. And it goes like this. That this guy got the coronavirus and he had to be put on a ventilator. After he was taken off the ventilator and he's getting better, he's on his way home, the hospital gives him his bill. And he looks at the bill and he sees and he begins to cry. And so the doctor turns to him and says, listen, I know it's a high bill, but please don't cry. You'll pay it whenever you can pay it. You're alive. Whenever you can pay, you'll pay it. So he says, no. I'm not crying because it's a high bill. I'm crying because all these years I've been breathing the air and I took advantage of it. I didn't appreciate the air that I've been breathing. Now I've been on a ventilator for 1 day and you charge me $1,000. So you show me how precious the air is. And I'm crying, how could it be that I didn't appreciate it until now? Yeah, either it's true or not, but it's an interesting perspective to help us understand the world that we have. I want to share one more story. And many of you know the story before, I've shared it before, but it's certainly worth repeating. And that is, it was during the holiday of Sukkot, when one is obligated to make the blessing on the lulav and the esrog. You have the palm branch and the citrus fruit, and it's a very big mitzvah that we do during the holiday of Sukkot, which comes about after the high holidays, after Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. But in America today, we can get a lulav and esrog. All you have to do, you can go onto the internet. I order for the community, but you can even go onto Amazon and order it on Amazon and get it delivered straight to your house. But in Europe, it wasn't so easy. In fact, you had to travel sometimes to the big cities in hopes that you can get a lulav and esrog, in hopes you can get a decent one that looks somewhat respectable, somewhat nice and clean and beautiful, and you would use it to make the blessings. It has happened many times that some cities do not have a lulav and esrog, the whole Sukkot. They simply cannot find one in that region for whatever reason. There were no travelers, whatever. It wasn't easy. And this is what happened. One time, in the city of Deitsch, the holiday of Sukkot was fast approaching, and they didn't have a lulav and esrog. And so Rabbi Yitzchak of Deitsch said, go stand on the main highway. If you see anybody traveling on the highway, stop them, ask them if they have lulav and esrog, and tell them they must come to Deitsch. At least we'll have one lulav and esrog for the whole city. And they're waiting and waiting, waiting. Finally, just before the holiday, they see a wagon. They stop the guy. They say, do you have a lulav and esrog? He says, yes. He said, well, you're coming with us because the holy Rabbi Yitzchak of Deitsch wants to see you. He says, no. I got to get back to my family. I've been away for a few months. I got to get back to my family. He says, no, you're coming with us to Deitsch. So they drag him to the holy Rabbi Yitzchak of Deitsch, and he says to this man, he says, please, you have a lulav and esrog. We don't have even one in our city. Please stay and let us make the blessing on this special mitzvah. The man says, no, I have to get back to my home, my family, they're waiting, I got to get back. Rabbi Yitzchak said, I'll tell you what. I'll make a deal with you. If you stay in Deitsch for Sukkot, I promise you that when you die and when I die, you will be in my quarters. You will be in my room. When this man heard this, that he's going to be in the same chamber, same room as a holy, great Rabbi, Rabbi Yitzchak of Deitsch, great Hasidic master, he says, okay, a deal. But he says, on one condition. We have to write it down on paper, because I don't want you getting out of that. And so they sat down, they made a contract, and they both signed the contract. He's going to stay in Deitsch, and Rabbi Yitzchak promised him that he's going to be in the same chamber when he passes away. Okay, comes the first night of Sukkot. The man needs to eat in a sukkah. So he goes to his host. He says, can I eat in your sukkah? The host says, no, sorry, you can't eat here. Okay, he doesn't know what to do. So he goes to the neighbor and he says, can I please eat in your sukkah? The neighbor says no. And he goes to every single house in Deitsch, and everybody doesn't let him eat in the sukkah. Now he's thinking to himself, what kind of crazy city is this? I'm stuck here. I'm a guest. I'm giving you my little Vanessa. No one lets me in. He found out that the reason why no one was letting him eat in the sukkah is because the Rabbi Yitzchak told them, do not let this guy into your sukkah. So in running to the rabbi, he says, Rabbi, what do you do? I want the mitzvah to eat in the sukkah. It's a mitzvah to eat in the sukkah, the first night of sukkah, every night of sukkah, especially the first night. You told everyone to let me in. What have you done? You locked me in this community and not giving me the opportunity to do a mitzvah. I'll tell you, I'll make a deal with you. Give me back that paper, that contract that you signed, and I'll let you eat in my sukkah. The man's thinking, he says, well, you just conned me into this whole deal. Now I'm stuck here. I can't get home for the holiday. I'm stuck in your city. I want to eat in a sukkah, but now I have to give back my portion in your room when I die. Now you really, got me in a corner. The man says, listen, the mitzvah to eat in a sukkah is more important to me than anything else. Here's your contract. I want to eat in the sukkah. And so he eats in the sukkah. Afterwards, Rabbi Yitzchak says, here's a contract back. I wanted to see how important the mitzvah of eating in the sukkah was to you. And I wanted to see also that if you would have come to my chamber after you died, it was only because I almost, so to speak, blackmailed you to sign the contract. You wouldn't have really appreciated it. But now that you show that you really cherish and value a mitzvah, now you belong in that room. And this is what it means to acquire a mitzvah. Acquiring a mitzvah means that we take the challenge so seriously and we take the opportunity, and it means so much to us that no matter at what cost, we're going to do it. And this is the meaning that God acquired these 5 things. It means that these are the most precious possessions by the Almighty God. But there's also a deeper meaning. And that is like this. If you look, Rashi notes, so like this. Now, he is the God of the heaven and the God of the earth, because I have made him familiar in the mouths of the people. But when he took me from my father's house, he was the God of the heavens, but not the God of the earth, because mankind did not acknowledge him, and his name was not familiar on the earth. Let's understand what's going on over here. What is Rashi telling us? He's saying like this. God may be everywhere, and everything may belong to God, but the world does not truly belong to God unless the world recognizes the truth. Until Abraham came along, this was not the case. The world did not recognize that God was in this world. God created the world. It's true. But we didn't recognize, or the world didn't recognize, that it was God's world. So therefore, God, in a sense, couldn't feel close to the world. He didn't appreciate the world. But once Abraham came along and taught us to recognize that there's a God in the world, now God also acquires the world. Not only are the heavens mine, but the earth is also mine. There's a famous story of the great Hasidic master, the Kotzker Rebbe. And he once stormed into the room and there was Hasidim were sitting, and he says, tell me, where is God? Where's God? So one chassid said God is everywhere. Another one said he's in the Holy Land. One said he's in the Torah. One said he's in the heavens. But he kept on saying, where's God? Where's God? Finally, the Rebbe said himself, do you know where God is? God is where we let him in. You want to know where God is? Wherever you let God in, that's where he is. In other words, you want God to acquire the world? Let God into the world. Make space for God. There has to be room for him. And this is why the Mishnah uses the term, you look back at the Mishnah, what word does the Mishnah say? Where is that? Here. For the heaven and earth. Heaven and earth as it is written, so says God, the heaven is my throne and the earth is my footstool. What house then can you build for me, and where is my place of rest? The Mishnah cites this verse in Genesis, and it continues. How many are your works? The Mishnah continues. 1 second. It says, how many are your works? O God, you have made them all with wisdom. The earth is filled with your acquisition. Then he says, with Abraham, how do we know that Abraham is one of God's acquisitions also? Because he blessed him and said, blessed be Abraham to God Most High, acquirer of heaven and earth. The Mishnah is telling us like this, that in the book of Genesis, there's a story of the great king. His name was Melchizedek. He was the king of Jerusalem, and he blessed Abraham, and he said that, blessed be Abraham to God Most High, the acquirer of heaven and earth. The Rebbe explains like this. Why does he use the heaven and earth to bless Abraham with? Okay? Like this. The acquirer of heaven and earth is Abraham introduced the awareness of God to the world. If Abraham was the cause of the entire world becoming God's acquisition, certainly Abraham himself is one of God's choice acquisitions, a component of God's own creation that now belongs to God in a deeper, more significant way. So the first verse tells us like this, that the world is God's. If you have a chair, you have to have a footstool. Okay, what does that mean? If you have a throne, you have to have a footstool. There are two things that work hand in hand. If you have a world, there has to be people in it. But in order for me to acquire the world, I need the people to recognize and to make the world their own and make the world God's own. And then God acquires it also. So let's take this a step further. One of the things that we say, the Mishnah tells us, is that the Torah, where is that? Let's go back up here. The Torah is one acquisition, right? The Torah, the people of Israel, the Holy Temple. These are all, if you think about it, they're all aspects of God's creation. And these aspects of God's creation introduce the awareness of God in the world. The Torah tells us that God's in the world. The temple shows us that God has a place in the world, right? So these are simply things that are merely expanding upon the world that God created, helping us be more aware of God's existence in the world. But again, what does it do to us? It brings out a very important detail, and that is that when something becomes one's own, it becomes part of that person. And when something of God's world becomes our own, it also becomes part of God, because we're part of God. And this is what the Mishnah is telling us. Let's look at text 3 here. The school of Shammai said, first the heavens were created, then the earth. As it is written, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. The school of Hillel says, First the earth was created, and then the heavens, as it is written, on the day that God Almighty made earth and heavens. So earth first. Says Rav Shimon ben Yochai, who was the next generation sages, and he says, I wonder why they argue. I say that the heavens and the earth were created together like a pot and the cover. It's a famous line, every pot has its cover, right? Why? Because they're made together. And so, why do you say that either the heaven is made first or the earth is made? They're both made together, meaning to say, to us, it may seem that the spiritual has a priority over the physical world. Like Shammai says, right, spirituality, the heavens were created first. But there's also a perspective that the physical is the primary focus of God's world. Where does God want us to be? Where does he want us to work? Where does he want us to live? On this world. So perhaps, maybe this world is where we're supposed to be. So comes Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, and he says, ultimately, these two dimensions of the reality are actually a set. It's a pot and its cover, it's a throne stool. They're not two separate things, but they're one together. Meaning to say that our task is actually to fuse the heaven and the earth together, which, by the way, fits in perfectly with the holiday of Shavuos. Because what happened at the holiday of Shavuos is, although our sages have kept the commandments before it was given, it was only once the Torah was given on Mount Sinai that we brought the heaven and earth merged together. We have the spiritual heavens and the physical earth, but they come together. And let's see text number 5. Text number 4. A father is obligated to do the following for his son: to circumcise him, to redeem him, to teach him Torah, to find a wife for him to marry, and to teach him a trade. How many things do we have here? 5 things. How many things does the Mishnah tell us? 5 things. Each of these 5 things correspond to one of the 5 teachings that the Mishnah tells us. Again, we want God to acquire the world that we live in. We have to acquire it also. We have to teach our children these 5 things. By the way, I gave a whole Rosh Hashanah speech on these 5 things once. I think one of the best speeches. This is a fundamental teachings of how we interact, or how we have to express our responsibility to our children, to the world that we live in. Number 1, he says, what's the first thing that a parent has to do? To circumcise their child. To perform the mitzvah of circumcision, corresponding to God's covenant with Abraham. Okay? One of God's acquisitions. The next thing the parent has to do is redeem the child, corresponding to God's redemption of the children of Israel from Egypt, which created the nation of Israel, the Jewish people. Number 2. Third thing is we have to teach our children Torah. That's the acquisition that the Mishnah says of Torah. Number 3, to marry them off, corresponding to the Holy Temple, which is God's marrying, so to speak, the Jewish people in a physical world. God is coming down into this world, being with us. A lot of these things that the Talmud tells us, especially in this text, it means literally, but it also means metaphorically speaking. But for now, so there's a combination of the physical meaning and also the metaphorical meaning. So when we talk about the marriage, it's talking about the Holy Temple, which is when God came down into our house, so to speak. And finally, the 5th thing is to teach the child a trade corresponding to heaven and earth, the natural order that sustains our very everyday existence. In order for the world to function properly, we have to be involved in commerce, right? We have to be involved with other people. And this means sustaining the heaven and earth and bringing it down to earth, or bringing heaven and earth, fusing them together. And this is what the Mishnah is telling us. And this is our task. And with this, I want to wish you a happy and healthy holiday, a joyous holiday. We should receive the Torah internally and with joy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions?